Really enjoy playing turn-based tactical RPGs, and as I've gotten older, I've found them more enjoyable for many reasons. I like that the battles are integrated into the story much better than random encounters, and don't act as time-wasting filler. I also have a much better understanding now as an adult of all the combat tactics required to succeed in these games. That brought me to the game that launched an incredibly interesting and long-running franchise, Disgaea: Hour of Darkness for the PlayStation 2. This is a tactical RPG that plays similarly to Final Fantasy Tactics in terms of the combat, but manages to define its own style uniquely to any other battle system. On top of that, it has one of the more bizarre plotlines that makes it stand out as you play as demons in the Netherworld. Disgaea: Hour of Darkness is the title of the PS2 game. Since its release, there have been a ton of new versions of the game, all acting as enhancements of the previous versions. There's Disgaea: Afternoon of Darkness for the PlayStation Portable, Disgaea DS for the Nintendo DS. There's also Disgaea PC for, you guessed it, the PC. Finally, there's a more modern release on the PC, PlayStation 4, and Switch under the title Disgaea 1 Complete. I wanted to experience the original version as you would have played it when it was originally released, since this would be the template for the series going forward, and that's why I chose the PS2 version. The game is developed by Nippon Ichi Software and distributed by Atlus. Nippon Ichi would eventually form their own American distributor, NIS Software. Currently, there are 7 main games in the series, with an 8th coming later this year. On top of that, there are several spin-offs such as the Prinny series of platformers, and numerous cameos of Disgaea characters in other games by the developer. There are even visual novels featuring characters from this game and series. The game's story and setting is what first attracted me to the series. NIS took many of the conventions you typically see in fantasy RPGs and turned it on its head. You play as the demons, which are the heroes of the story, and while the humans and angels aren't evil, they definitely aren't the good guys in this one. There's a strange moral ambiguity to the denizens of heaven, which seems strange but gives the game a whole lot of intrigue. While having a serious storyline, the game never takes itself too seriously and is filled with tons of humor. Characters can be snarky and self-deprecating, and there's a distinct Monty Python-style silliness to many of the characters' interactions, and even some fourth walls will be broken by making fun of many of the typical RPG conventions and tropes. When the story needs to be serious with emotional moments for a character, they can really pull at your heartstrings due to how well the characters and story were developed. Whether you're drawn to this game by the story or tactical battles, it doesn't disappoint in either area. It's hard to talk about what I really love about this game without spoiling some of the story, but I'll try to keep it to a minimum and won't spoil the ending in any way. You play through the game through the perspective of Prince Laharl, an arrogant and impudent son of King Kerchevskoy, ruler of the Netherworld. You're awoken by the king's vassal, Etna. You've been asleep for 2 years, and Etna's unique methods of waking you with such tools as a jackhammer or Gatling gun have finally done the trick. You learn that your father died shortly after your slumber began, and many of the other demon lords are fighting for the right to rule the Netherworld. Laharl decides that as son of the former king, that he is the rightful ruler and sets out to put these other demons in their place. Along the way, you'll befriend Flan, an angel trainee that was sent by heaven to assassinate King Kerchevskoy 2 years too late. Later, you'll join alongside Captain Gordon, a bumbling human space captain that looks to be a graduate of the school of Zap Brannigan. All that's missing is the red velour skirt suit. It doesn't take you that long to become the overlord of the Netherworld, but that's only the start of your troubles. You'll quickly find that both the Earth and Heaven are plotting against you with an invasion, and you'll need to stop them before they succeed in destroying you and your realm. As with many well-developed stories, there are many twists and turns, and not everyone is exactly as they appear to be. Every character has their own arc for you to experience. Laharl starts off as an arrogant brat that's been coddled by his father for too many years. The death of his human mother when he was young has stunted his emotional growth and plays heavily into his character as the story progresses. Now on his own, he'll come to terms with his father's death, as well as the past trauma of losing his mother. Typical of a demon, he seems to be driven only by hate, but angel trainee Flan sees him capable of experiencing love and works to bring those feelings out in Laharl. Etna, the sarcastic and snarky demon girl, hides a tremendous amount of guilt, which will bring her to confronting her past and making amends. Like many people in real life, she uses humor to hide her own insecurities and shortcomings. She was a loyal vassal to the former king, but shows blatant disrespect to Laharl, whom she sees as yet unworthy of the title of overlord. Of course, I couldn't leave out the Prinnies from this review. Prinnies are souls of thieves and murderers sewn into the body of a penguin with peg legs and bat wings. They're required to serve in either heaven or the netherworld as a soldier or slave until it earns its release. They're the comic relief characters for the most part, though we learn about their tortured existence throughout the game. Angel trainee Flan, who's been sent from heaven to assassinate the former king, will become the heart of the team. Her desire to bring out the best in everyone keeps them together. Though she's quite naive of the workings of the underworld, she must come to terms with the idea that some of the angels aren't as morally pure as she thought they were. I won't spoil the other characters or story arcs, but each one of them will have their perceptions of the netherworld and the morality of their own people challenged as the plot progresses. While the overall story is serious, there are many funny and less serious encounters and elements to the plot. The first major demon that Laharl faces is Vyers, who is contending for the throne. Claiming himself to be the Dark Adonis, Laharl laughs in Vyers' face and insults him, referring to him as weak and renames him Mid-Boss. From that point on, Vyers is always referred to as Mid-Boss by the characters and the game's dialogue system itself, much to the frustration of this recurring enemy. A plotline later in the game sees Laharl being blackmailed by an unknown enemy at the time. Apparently, the paparazzi took an embarrassing candid photo of him, and he must surrender the throne or face public humiliation. The villain was banished long ago from the castle because he stole the king's favorite snack, and he's now seeking revenge. The story is told in the visual novel fashion similar to the Fire Emblem series. You'll get several of these sequences before and after new battles. What's great about these sequences is in the interaction between different characters. The dialogue is well written, and almost every line of dialogue in these visual novel sequences is voiced. The acting is quite good and includes some recognizable voice actors from other video games of the last few decades, as well as dubbed anime. As for the combat itself, you fight on a small square grid battlefield. The combat is turn-based, and you move and perform actions with all of your characters first, then the enemy gets to move and attack. Each map has a portal square where you start, and there's a predetermined amount of characters that you can bring into combat for each battle. You don't have to bring out every character at once, and this can even be used as a strategy. Many times I found it beneficial to bring a tanky character out to get enemies to approach. Once in range, I could bring out my magic users who are powerful, but lack defense and HP to survive in the early onslaught by the enemies. Each character can move and attack. The character class determines what type of weapons you can use, and attacking with particular weapon types will increase their skill with that weapon. You can also use various items or defend, as most RPGs let you. One of the unique and necessary to master options in battle is picking up and throwing characters or enemies. Throwing a character can get them into battle faster, or allow them to pass terrain that's impossible to cross on foot. You can even stack characters on top of each other to cross an entire map pretty quickly. Throwing a Prinny will cause them to explode on impact, dealing damage to the target. You can even pick up enemies and toss them as well. This is great if they're in the way and you need to get a character somewhere fast. You can toss enemies onto another enemy, and they'll combine into a more powerful one. This is actually a good way to increase the amount of experience you'll get from killing them. Getting characters in the right position is key to winning battles due to the combo system. Characters adjacent to each other have a chance to combine for a larger attack, with up to 4 characters attacking at once. If you're on opposite sides of an enemy, they can also attack with you and combo and chain attacks. Many maps also contain squares with geo symbols on them. Squares across the map will have various highlighted colors. A geo symbol affects every square that matches the color it's currently sitting on. It can be anything like invincibility, higher stats, or even squares that do damage if you end your turn on them. This creates many interesting possibilities, and the game uses these to give advantages to enemies, though you can move the geo symbols and turn the advantage towards your party. There's even the meme-worthy level where every square but one is invincibility. The idea is to throw the enemies onto the non-invincible square, then beat them to a pulp. The combat is fun, and it's most of what you'll be doing throughout the game. You get a few short tutorial levels to start, but I wish they went into a little more detail. I started playing the way you would a Final Fantasy Tactics game or even a Fire Emblem game by building a large party to overwhelm the enemy. To my surprise, this is not how the game wants you to play, and you'll be punished in later stages. You see, the only way to gain experience is to kill an enemy, and only the one that deals the final blow gets the experience. It's a common mechanic in these type of games. What the game really wants you to do is use a few characters to get to really high levels, and use others as support as you need them. I wish this was explained better by the game because I needed to excessively grind later in the game with a few characters since I was spreading experience too thinly between my party. As for the playable characters themselves, there are several characters that are considered main characters. They play a part in the overall story, and they come with a set character class and abilities. To fill in the holes in your party, you can create apprentice characters of numerous classes. There are all sorts of fighters, rogues, and magic users to choose from. There are even monsters that you can recruit based on what you fought in previous battles. You'll need at least a few of them, and it's wise to wait until you have a larger party to start making new characters. This is because the apprentice shares a connection to the characters they're created for. For instance, if you create a red mage as an apprentice to Flawn, she'll be able to use the red mage's spells when she's in proximity with her vassal, in addition to her own spells, and even learn the vassal's spells after a while. Apprentices also learn the skills of their masters and have a very high percentage for a combo attack with the master. You start with a basic set of classes to choose from, and there are set conditions to unlock new ones. This usually means gaining certain amounts of levels with a different set of classes. For instance, getting to level 10 with a monk and fighter unlocks a new set of warrior classes. I really enjoyed the customization, and by the time I was finished with the game, I had made tons of different apprentice characters to supplement my party. A lot of them have become useless towards the end of the game though, since you'll have a lot of main characters to use with similar abilities. Between battles, you'll have the castle to explore. There are plenty of NPCs here that have clues to what the next battle will comprise of, or might have just something funny to say. You can shop for items and equipment as well, and visit the hospital to heal characters that took damage in the previous battles, since they don't heal on their own. There are several other things to do as well. You can create new characters, take promotion tests with each of your characters, which involves beating up a group of enemies. You can also convene the Dark Assembly. Through the assembly, you can propose a topic like allowing the store to sell higher level equipment, or give your characters certain advantages in combat. Your character's promoted level will determine how much influence you have with the assembly. You can also bribe members so they'll vote in your favor. If the measure passes, the topic will take effect, but if not, you can always try later by bribing more members, or choose to fight the assembly and kill the ones that voted against you, allowing your side to prevail since a dead member's votes are revoked. Finally, there's the item world. This is a really amazing feature of the game. Inside each item is a dungeon of 100 floors that get progressively more difficult. The starting floor's difficulty is determined by how common or rare the item is. You can exit at every 10th floor, or use a special item to exit. These dungeons are procedurally generated and are different each time you visit. This essentially gives the game infinite replayability if you enjoy just playing the battles. Different items will contain different types of enemies and challenges as well. The point of Item World during the main game is a place to grind for levels and obtain rare treasure as well. This makes grinding a lot easier and more fun since the maps are randomized each time. The only real downside is the generation can make some enemies appear on platforms that are not accessible by any means, and killing everything on the floor is what unlocks bonus items. The game has multiple endings, and there's a good chance that you won't get the good ending on your first playthrough. I played through the game twice using the New Game Plus feature. What I really like is you can play infinite loops of New Game Plus, which allow you to customize your party even more and play through with every different type of apprentice. It's really hard to unlock all the classes in a single playthrough, so this is a great way to extend your time with the game. There's also a level cap of 9,999, and your experience carries over with each playthrough. I really wish it was clear from the start, though, which conditions are there to get the best ending. With the average ending, you get a hint about what to do for your next playthrough, but on my first time through, I locked myself out of getting the best ending without even realizing it very early in the game. I won't reveal the conditions in this video, but if you're only interested in playing through the story a single time, I'd definitely look that up before starting. If you play any of the versions after the PS2 original, there's also an alternate story called Etna Mode. You have to unlock this by completing some secret objectives in the main game. In this campaign, Etna accidentally kills Lahara while trying to wake him, and now Etna needs to take the throne and deal with the revolting demons. In all versions, there's tons of post-story content. These include the Prinny World and the Cave of Ordeal. This can be especially challenging and requires that you work your way up to that max level of 9,999. Between these and getting the level 100 of the item world, there's potentially hundreds of hours of post-game content. The game can be quite challenging, but it's not impossible or unfair. It's very likely that you'll die on many of the stages when you try them for the first time. You'll have to learn the gimmick of each stage, and by the second or third try, you'll have a much better strategy. You'll definitely have to determine good routes and the priority of enemies to go after first. The graphics are very refreshing for this era of PS2 games. All the characters are drawn as 2D sprites with anime-style drawings in the visual novel section. The levels itself are 3D polygons, so it looks very similar in design style to Final Fantasy Tactics. Taking place in the fictional Netherworld, there's lots of unique backgrounds that are otherworldly. The mix of bizarre terrain and color stand out and creates a style unlike any other game I've seen. The sprites look great and are incredibly detailed. I think if those were 3D polygon models, they'd look a lot less impressive. The only problem is that the PS2 does some strange warping with the sprites sometimes when it's scaling or rotating the playfield. The music is great. The game starts off with a text scroll and an almost creepy sounding lullaby. This melody is repeated in many of the songs throughout the game. The battle music feels epic, like something you'd hear in either a scene from The Lord of the Rings or an Ys game from Falcom. The songs are great, but many of them lack a memorable theme, with the exception of the main one that plays throughout the game. Overall, this was a great start to a long-running series. I did get a little frustrated at times, mostly due to not having enough info from the manual or tutorials on how to properly fight the battles, and looking on message boards like GameFAQs had a lot of people just claiming that you need to get good, and not providing good information for beginners. Each game in the series features a different cast of characters and a different netherworld entirely, but the stories are very similar, and you'll see cameos from overlords and characters from previous games, like Laharl and Etna in Disgaea 2. This was the only game to get a direct sequel, Disgaea D2, which to this day is exclusive to the PlayStation 3. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the games in this series. Let me know in the comments what your experience with Disgaea has been. Were you won over by its story, game mechanics, or never-ending random dungeons? Or did you just find this game to be overhyped and difficult to get into? I'd love to know. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then.